I know it's very difficult for you to but could you describe the FARC kidnapping attempt and the killing of your father in 1983 and how that played in the future views for you as president of Colombia?
I remember that when I was talking with my brothers and sisters and my mother in the aftermath of the killing of my father, we received many more bad news. Here tonight is with us former ambassador before United Nations, Mrs. Claudia Blum.
Could you stand up so everybody could see you? Please.
Her father was killed by the same time of the assassination of my father, in the same circumstances, very similar circumstances. The terrorist group FARC was going to kidnap her father, and he resisted, as my father did. And many friends were suffering the same problem. Therefore, I said to my brothers, we are going to live with sadness forever. And we need to fight for this country to change, for our sons, daughters, and the new generation of this country to live happily in Colombia. But in our feelings, we need to establish the difference between sadness and hatred. And in many interviews, I have been asked, did you make the decision to run for president with the goal of revenging the killing of your father? My political career had begun far before. At the end of the 50s, Colombia was discussing a constitutional amendment to introduce political rights for women. And my mother was one of the main leaders in my province in this fight. And I went to many places with her, shaking at her hands. Therefore, I have been in politics all my life, and at the same time in farming. And I have had, with all the clarity, that you cannot host revenging feelings. You need to have clear goals on what to do for the country, clarity about what should be the tasks you need to carry out for the country, but you cannot allow hatred to prosper in your heart.
Could you just briefly describe the kidnapping attempt and also the killing of your dad, the circumstances, what actually happened, how it happened, since it's pretty awful?
As I say in the book, it was, you have already reminded us that the assassination of my father took place in the year 1983. He was young, full of energy, charismatic, and he was at the ranch with one of my brothers and my sister. And a group of 15 members of the terrorist group FARC came to the ranch to kidnap him. And as soon as he saw them with long weapons, long rifles, my father took his pistol and fired them. And they fired and killed my father. My brother, attempting to defend my father, suffered an injury that crushed one of his lungs. And one teacher, one female teacher, who taught at the school in the nearby of the farm, and who had great admiration for my father, she supply a hideout for my sister not to be kidnapped. Therefore, what was the outcome? The killing of my father. My brother survived by miracle, and a female teacher in one rural community hid my sister and preventing her from being kidnapped.
For more than 30 years, Colombia was held hostage to bloodshed. When did you decide to run for president, end the status quo, and do whatever it takes to make the killing stop for a peaceful future?
I was born in the year 1952, in the middle of the political violence. We live in a farm in the coffee region. And in the coffee region, there was a very hard expression of this violent political struggle between the two main political parties. Therefore, I grew up in the middle of this violence. Every day we receive bad news. And I remember that by the year maybe 1957, I don't remember if I mentioned the year or not in the book, more than 500 members of the former liberal guerrillas, horseback riding, arrived at our farm. You cannot imagine what was our impression. My brothers and my impression and mine. We saw this big number of people horseback riding with rifles, with pistols, organized as guerrillas. Once Colombia finally reached a peace agreement between the two political parties, it coincided with the birth of the Cuban Revolution. And Colombia and Bolivia were chosen as the two South American countries to replicate the Cuban Revolution. And immediately we saw the appearance of Marxist-oriented guerrillas. And it coincided with my years at the university. Therefore, I have to say that all this amount of events created in my soul the firm determination to participate in politics. But I want to confess, I don't remember having lived without being in politics. My wife one day was asked, Lena, when is Alvaro going to start campaigning? And her answer was, Alvaro never quit campaigning. Therefore, maybe one of my mistakes is that I cannot remember when I made the decision to participate in politics. There is a legend, and because of Brian Winter pressure, I disclosed this legend in the book. Some people in my province say, when Alvaro was a child, his younger brother Jaime was asked, Alvaro was asked, what are you going to be when you become adult? And the legend says, I am going to be president. And the same legend says, once my brother Jaime was asked, his answer was, I am going to be the brother of the president.